Hey, Juan here. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about why tech companies should be caring and moving towards cloud environments, and why there are some benefits compared to on-premise solutions. So before moving on, are you using cloud products? Are you implementing cloud products, or are you implementing on-premise products? Please let us know in the comment below. So for many of you, cloud environments and development on the cloud is going to be a normal way of working, and probably has been a normal way of working for years. But the reality is that there are many companies who are still working very heavily on on-premise products. So today I want to go through what are the benefits of actually moving towards cloud environments and why you should be paying attention to, and probably why this is the way to go if you want to be a future-proof company. And yes, as always, there's pros and cons to this approach, so we'll try to cover those ones as well. So first of all, when you move to a cloud environment, it's going to give you a flexibility that not any on-premise environment is going to give you. It's going to be very easy to scale up your infrastructure. And not only scale up your infrastructure, but also scale up how you access your customers. So typically when you work on an on-premise product, you will have to have direct sales, so people that actually try to sell your product to those people. On cloud products, scalability and being able to provide those solutions to those same customers worldwide is a much easier process. It actually supports much more naturally modern ways of payment, like think about subscription or pay as you go or pay per usage. Actually, those processes are much easier to implement and support in a cloud solution or in a cloud product than an on-premise product, where you actually can give access or not, depend on the usage of the product, and actually let the users use as much as they want of the product and scale up your infrastructure whenever is needed, and only in that moment. It is way easier to update a cloud product. In this case, everybody, all of your users are actually using the same version of the product. So you don't have to have this kind of a sometimes potential nightmare of trying to figure out if a customer is in the current version, how do you actually help them to move to the next versions. And many customers are actually not always willing to move to later versions for whatever reason. So it's very easy when you have a cloud environment that you make sure that everybody's working with the same version. Much easier to report tickets and much easier to track tickets and make sure that you are actually fixing potential problems in the product. Whereas when you have different versions, it can get very complicated. From the customer point of view, actually you are bringing a very big benefit. You are reducing the IT overhead that they have to actually do in order to implement a version control, so that the cloud product is there, it gets automatically updated, and they don't have to care about deploying it to everybody in the company. If you're enjoying the video so far, please give it a like, it helps a lot the channel and it's free for you. Reliability and security are things that typically are going to be way better in cloud environments. You could argue that in some cases on-premise products are going to be safer and they're going to be more reliable, and potentially they can be. But in general, what happens in most of the cases is that for most of the companies, they don't have very big teams that can take care of security. So if you're a company that has to make sure that your environment is safe, you probably don't have a very big team that can take care of this. When you think about AWS or any other cloud providers or cloud computing providers, they are going to have really big teams that are actually looking into security and reliability of those systems, and they are going to be maintaining them up and running all the time. So most likely, this is going to be a win-win when you go to a cloud environment, unless you're in a really, really big organization that can have dedicated teams that are paying attention to this, which most likely is not going to be the case. Data and insights from the usage of your product is going to be also very important when it comes to have your product on a cloud environment. It is true that there are packages that provide software analytics and insights for on-premise products, and they're fine as well, but they're never going to be the same as having your product directly into the cloud, where you can look very easily into heat maps, how people are actually interacting with your product, what is the journey that they are following. You can, to a certain degree, do these things on an on-premise product, but it's never going to be the same. And in most of the cases, there are lots of solutions already available for these cloud products that they are not so obvious for on-premise products. Having your product on the cloud is going to also enable you to do A/B testing in a very easy way. You're going to be able to release a feature for a subset of your customers and let them interact with it before you deploy it to everybody else. Why this is important? Well, you typically want to test with a small group, so you make sure that your feature, your functionality, or your product is actually serving the needs that the users have. So you might do A/B testing by releasing a feature for a specific type of industry that you are serving your products for, or a specific type of geography. For example, you might want to always release in a specific market where you know that your customers are quite okay with testing new features and exercising or get the access to them early on, instead of providing them to all your customer base in one go. This is going to help you to validate the feature and make a better educated decision on should I release this feature to the whole market or not. It certainly opens the doors towards experimentation within your product in a much easier way. And if we continue with the theme of data, of experimentation, of course we want to talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence. Having your products on the cloud is actually going to open the doors for you to be able to look into this direction. Machine learning, artificial intelligence, they are always going to work over large amounts of data, and the only way realistically that you have to gather that kind of large amounts of data to build those models, to train those engines, is going to be by having your product in the cloud. What doors is this going to open? Well, this is going to help you to understand user behavior, to do recommendation systems, and on the long term do predictive behavior of your users, where you can actually try to understand how they are going to react to certain things and happenings or events in your product, and actually start offering a solution already before they get there. And then there's going to be cost savings. In general, it's going to be relatively easy or cheap for small and medium businesses to run these cloud products, so they can have easy access to these different environments to build their own products and actually do it in a relatively fast way. Many of them, they have easy or relatively easy ways to set up the structure or the infrastructure that is going to be needed for your product to be deployed and for users to access it. You could say that potentially the cost savings are on the on-premise side, and potentially that might be true in some cases. It depends a lot on the scalability, on how big your project is and how many people are actually using it. But you have to also think that it's going to change a lot the way that you are delivering your on-premise product. It might be true that in some cases implementing an on-premise product feature might be cheaper as such, but the problem is that you still had to deliver and you had to still have the infrastructure to actually give access to that on-premise product to your users, and the users still had to implement it or deploy it internally within their organization. So on the long term, especially if you look from both sides, there's going to be a much cheaper solution when you think about a cloud approach. Having a cloud product is going to also help you change the way that you do business. So businesses that operate on cloud environments or on cloud products typically work very different to traditional businesses that are selling on-premise products. On-premise products many times are still selling perpetual licenses and then maintenance contracts on top of those perpetual licenses. Sometimes they have subscription models. But whenever you go to a cloud product or a cloud environment, actually is going to be much more flexible on the way that you are actually building your business. You might not just sell subscriptions, but you might relatively easily implement things like in-app purchases, pay as you go, or pay per use, or different business models that you would not have access whenever you have a on-premise product. And going back to scalability, which I discussed earlier, in general, scalability is going to be always much easier to implement within a cloud product than within a desktop product. On-premise products typically have grown organically, and the larger the audience it is that they have, accordingly the growth of the personnel tends to happen. Yes, it's not going to be linear, it's not going to be at the same pace. When you go to a cloud environment, usually scaling the activities is going to be quite different from what you have in a desktop product. So typically you are going to have a very different way of doing support, or actually doing marketing, or doing sales, or doing development. So most likely you're going to need a smaller team when you're working in a cloud environment, than what you would need in an on-premise environment in order to achieve the same size of an audience. And this means, by the way, that you have to change your processes. I don't mean that if you do support and if you do development on the same way that you do it on premises, you do it on the cloud environment, obviously, then you are probably going to have the same problem, that you are going to have the same scalability problem that you will have in the on-premise product. But if you change your culture internally in the company, when you think about, okay, now when we are in cloud, we had to potentially look into how do we do development, how do we do deployment, how do we do support or customer success, how do we do marketing or promote our product. And you do it in the ways that make sense for cloud products. Most likely you are going to need a smaller team than you would need on an on-premise product. Is cloud always the answer for a tech company to implement their products? It depends, but in most of the cases it's going to be an easier solution and a much more scalable and reliable way of building the business and building the products and making sure that you are doing it in as easy as possible way for you and your users, so they can get access to any new feature that you're building in a very easy way compared to what it will be with an on-premise product. So if you would ask me, nowadays, I pretty much on every single case, I will go for a cloud product, except maybe in some very specific occasions. It is true that if you have a product that has been living its life for a long time, and it's an on-premise product, actually doing the transition to a cloud product might be a big headache for you. But is the transition of a whole product to rebuild it on cloud the best solution? That's a different approach. It might be that when you think about what your product should be in a cloud environment, it might be there's a bunch of products to actually cover what the original product was doing when it was built as an on-premise product. So yes, I'm a big believer and fan of cloud products, and I think that this is the direction that pretty much I would recommend everybody to go at this point. So, have I missed anything on what are the advantages of cloud and what are the advantages of an on-premise product? Let me know in the comments below. I will see you next week, and remember, stay safe.